We are back in the tent here in Palo Alto, in the middle of Silicon Valley today with Cindy Padnos. Thank you for making time. Want to welcome you to the tent. You, again, I say this all the time, but you've done so many different things. I don't even know where to start. So I'll let you make a quick intro. Tell us who's Cindy, what have you done, and what are you up to these days? I want to, again, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tent.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
So I have done a lot of things in my life and in my career, to the point where at one point my parents said to me, "What, you can't hold a job?" Because I kept changing jobs all the time. But that's really quite normal here in Silicon Valley, as you know. So I've been in the tech world my entire career. I had done my undergraduate degree at the University of Michigan, my master's at Carnegie Mellon, and that's really where the whole technical training and interest came into play, was at Carnegie Mellon. And I've done work in the corporate world, I've done work in management consulting, but probably the most exciting part for me was working for about a dozen years as an entrepreneur, and then moving into venture capital more recently. So as an entrepreneur, I helped take one company public here in the Bay Area, a company called Scopus Technology, that I was VP of marketing of. I then went on to be a CEO for the first time of a software company that was doing performance management software. And after we sold that company, I decided I had run out of excuses. It was really time to start one of my own. That company was called Vivant. It was a software company as well that helped very large corporations better manage and pay all of their contract labor.
Okay.
We called it services procurement. And from there, I moved into starting, having the opportunity to really build my own business from the ground up, and that was pretty exciting. We sold that company in 2001 to a public company here in the Bay Area, and I kind of stepped back and realized that it wasn't as though I knew everything about being an entrepreneur, but I had built an amazing array of relationships and developed an understanding of a lot of different business models, not just one, and that's when I decided to move over into venture capital. So the current business we have today is a micro VC fund, and it's called Illuminate Ventures.
Yeah, so maybe for our audience, tell them a little bit, what does it mean to be a micro VC fund? Again, I think in the Middle East, people just think of people as investors, and there's different varieties of them. So tell us a little bit, explain the micro part of it.
Yeah, so venture capital historically, if you go back 30 years ago, it was really made up of people who had been entrepreneurs themselves, or at least operating executives, that formed pretty small funds. They were even 10 or 20 or $30 million in size. Yep. And they went in very early into companies. They were really making a bet on a team of entrepreneurs, and they were the initial funding source for many of those companies. Companies like, Cisco and Apple and many others received capital from what were really small funds back then. And since then, over time, a lot of firms grew to be quite large. Yeah. They grew to be 150, 300, even 600 or $1 billion kind of funds. And with that, it forced them to be investing larger amounts of capital into each investment, which meant it was harder and harder for them to do those really early stage investments. So that's what we do. We're kind of retro, if you want to think of it that way, where we take people like myself who have hands-on operating experience, who want to go in and invest at the earliest stages in companies. And we're kind of that gap round, if you will, between what are typically angel investors, individuals with their own private capital, and the larger venture capital firms who want to put at minimum, $5 or $7 million into a Series A round of financing. We're the gap. We come in as traditional investors in the sense that it's equity capital, it's not a loan, it's not convertible debt, but we are doing those $1 to $3 million size rounds of financing at the very early stages of companies.
And so, really quickly, maybe I would love to get your thought on this whole idea of the Series A crunch that everybody talks about, because I get that's your bread and butter. What are your thoughts on that, just really quickly?
My short answer to it is that great companies always get funding.
Exactly.
And so if you take a look at the thousands of companies that perhaps have been funded inappropriately over the last few years through incubators and accelerators and many other things. And when I say inappropriately, I don't think they're bad ideas or bad entrepreneurs, but they may not be truly venture-backable businesses.
Yeah.
And so, what I think is that we sort the wheat from the chaff at the point in time that you do that Series A round of funding. And the best companies will get funded and others will not. So, we haven't had issues within our own portfolio. We've had follow-on financings for every company that we've invested in.
Wow.
But it really, and what we call up rounds of financing, meaning someone's willing to come in and pay a premium for those companies because they've gotten, they've made progress, they're further along. But I think there'll be more companies that are left at the wayside. I think that's true.
Sure. And how big is the fund?
It's a $35 million fund.
And then the team, how many people?
We have, well, it depends on what you count, but we have 4, active people on the team day to day, and then we also have interns out of several of the major universities and that kind of thing.
The reason I asked that is because, as some of the entrepreneurs kind of are starting to learn, dealing with a fund of that size and a couple of partners, it's a very intimate kind of interaction, and it's about building a relationship with the investor and really engaging with them. So you're not Andreessen Horowitz or some mega fund like you said that's doing 5 to 7 million. You have limited financial money to invest. So you want to make really, really good investments. So,
yes, we do.
So tell us a little bit about the process. How does it usually work? Is it someone you meet at a conference? Is it a warm introduction? Where does the deal flow come from?
So we looked at 850 roughly new investment possibilities last year, and we did 5.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're super selective, as you said, about the kinds of things we look at. Our firm is a little bit unusual in that we're super focused. We only do enterprise companies. So we don't do any consumer internet. We have been focused on this area that has suddenly become interesting again, but that's what we've been doing since our inception. Right. And people call it B2B versus B2C, enterprise versus consumer, and we've been on one side of that equation for a long time. So when we look at a new investment, we're always looking first at the team. Yeah. That's the #1 criteria. Are these people who attract other great people? Because one of the things there's a kind of a truism out there that people say A quality people attract other A quality people. Sure. And B quality people actually attract C quality people. Uh-oh. Yeah, uh-oh. And I think it's true. And so we're always looking not at just the founder, but who's that founder able to attract around them? Do they have the best advisors? Do they have the best other co-founders and team members? Yep. And it's very telling, whether or not they're able to attract those kind of people. And that will make a huge difference over the life of the business.
So actually, quick point. You are kind of a rare breed as far as only doing enterprise, because again, I know a bunch of investors who either only do consumer or favor it significantly. And I think people, enterprise traditionally in the past has scared investors a little bit because of sales cycles and implementation costs and account sales and stuff. So any specific reason? Is that just kind of where your heart lies, or do you believe in it? Or I know you mentioned it's coming back and it's kind of hot. It's
suddenly sexy again.
It is sexy, so enterprise is sexy again. That's a good point. Yeah. Exactly.
But no, there's a really clear set of facts around it. So we've done a fair amount of research, and the research shows that enterprise software companies completely outperform the consumer internet companies. If you look at M&A transactions, the value of a B2B company is literally on average 2x that of a consumer company. Okay. If you look at IPOs, and we did an analysis that looked at all of the IPOs from 2011 and 12, and we only looked at companies that had at least 60 days of trading activity, and it showed a 50-point spread on average. 50 points, it's huge, between the average performance of a B2B software company versus B2C. And that was not, by the way, just after the Facebook and Groupon debacles. That was earlier on in this process. It was looking over 2 years. And the reasons are really fundamental if you think about it. the consumer internet is a hit-based world.
Yeah.
There's only one Facebook. And so if you pick the right company, the likelihood is it can be, you know, massively successful, right? But every other company just falls by the wayside.
Totally.
And if you look at the enterprise world, and I know this from when we took Scopus public back in 1995, there were 5 other successful companies that were direct competitors to us that all had IPOs within a 12-month period. Yeah, Vantiv, Clarify, Aurum, a whole group of companies. Every one of them made, you know, money for the entrepreneurs, for the founders, as well as the investors. And it's fundamentally because business buyers demand choice, right? They won't settle for having one database company or one, you know, anything.
Do you also think that it's potentially because, you know, consumer stuff is kind of trendy or it's a fad and it comes and goes? And then the way I look at enterprise is this. If you've built a product that solves a problem and you've figured out what people are willing to pay for it and your customer acquisition cost, then literally you're most likely going to improve on the product, and you've got a process or a cycle. So the number, maybe it's not the hockey stick, but it's a consistent growth if the product is good. So
so you've hit on something, and the even more dramatic aspect of that today is because of cloud computing and because of the strategy that most software companies, most enterprise software companies have to have their customers pay a subscription rather than an upfront license fee the way it used to be. You have a very, very consistent revenue stream. We have a company in our portfolio right now that I was just sitting with the CEO yesterday. When we invested, they literally had a couple $100,000 of revenue. They will do $50 million in revenue this year. And that company has perhaps 5, maybe to 7% possible change in what the outcome at the end of the year will be, because so much of their revenue now is recurring. If they sign these people up to annual agreements and sometimes even multi-year agreements, and if they are very good about the quality of their product and therefore don't have a lot of churn, then they have a hugely predictable revenue stream. And even if they, you know, miss a quarter by a small amount, it has very, very little impact on the overall annual revenue of the company. That is being rewarded in the market today. And so part of the reason the performance of these enterprise software companies in the IPO market is so strong is because they're very predictable. You know, the risk is much less that you're going to have a fickle consumer who decides, you know, they don't like using that product anymore.
Like, and again, it's very trendy, or like it seems like one day something's big and then the next day, like.
So fundamentally, all of that's true, and then go back to the even more basic, which is I believe as an early stage investor, you have to invest in what you know, and what I know deeply is enterprise software, which is what I've been doing for 20 years. So I don't think anyone can, you know, I don't think a consumer internet investor can suddenly become an enterprise investor, and I know I can't suddenly become an energy or green tech or clean tech or any other investor, not overnight.
Totally, that's very true. So again, I actually like enterprise, and I don't know why.
Oh, cool.
I think
so you're cool again too.
Yeah, I'm cool too. Well, I kind of like everything, but no, I actually like enterprise because again, the exact same things you said. It's very consistent, and once you've built a good product, then these doors open, and then you have VARs and you know, the partners, and you know, all of a sudden, then SAP or
other people sell for you.
Sell for you, and then it's I think what I've noticed also is that as you get better, your customer acquisition cost goes down, and you become it's like it becomes a well-oiled machine, and then if you have a monthly subscription that's coming in, it's just cha-ching, cha-ching,
it's a beautiful
cha-ching.
thing.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, we love it. We love it.
So
awesome.
one of the other things that's really changed in that space is that if you look at companies we invested in 5 or 7 years ago, they typically had very expensive direct sales organizations. You know, these were sales reps that cost $250,000 a year, that traveled all over the country to close sales. And today, our best companies have literally not a single outside sales rep. It's all done by phone and the internet. One of the companies in our portfolio, it's a company called Bright Edge, has a platform for search engine optimization, and they have gone from literally 0 customers 4 years ago to 3,000 major brands using their product today, and they don't have any outside salespeople. And I mean, their customers are everything from Walmart to Walgreens to VMware and Symantec to rugsdirect.com and
Wow.
everyone in between.
That's
It's very
awesome.
interesting.
That's very cool. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, because there's not that many enterprise companies in the Middle East. So
Okay.
enterprise is sexy again. Build enterprise. we will connect you with Cindy. By the way, do you just invest locally, or is it, do you like to be close to your investments?
We like to be relatively close, but although we have one investment in Canada, up in Toronto, we have one in that actually has been acquired recently. That was in Pittsburgh. They're all domestic.
Okay.
Well, North American, let's put it that way.
Canada. My friend says Canada, America's hat.
Yeah, America's hat, okay. They might think of us as their pants, I don't know.
I grew up in Europe, so I have this thing about, I like the Canadians, I like their little European flavor. So we're at this part of the show that we call Lessons Through Stories. I think I showed you the board.
Okay.
Just a quick little reminder, our audience, you've seen this.
So are you picking or am I?
No, you get to pick. If you can read my chicken scratch, then you can pick one, and I think you were leaning towards...
Ask your mom.
Okay, so Ask Your Mom is actually not one of my topics. Stephanie Palmieri came up with that.
I know Stephanie.
I'd like to hear your take on Ask Your Mom and the story behind it.
Well, it's actually kind of interesting. When I had to make a decision about what to do next in my career, I was toying with an opportunity that was with a very large investment company. It is headquartered in New York, and I hadn't told my parents that I was changing jobs yet again, but I was flying to New York all the time. And so finally, at one point, my mother said to me, "Cindy, what are you doing in New York all the time? And everything you do is on the West Coast." So I explained to her, and the company, it's a firm that's extremely prestigious, that anyone in their right mind would probably say, I'd love to work for them, and it would give you an investment platform with unending capital and all of the rest of those things. Unending capital. Yeah, no, so pretty much unending. And they had approached me about possibly expanding and building out a West Coast operation for them. And it was a fascinating conversation because my father, who has been an entrepreneur his entire life, thought that was very cool, and that he would have bragging rights and all of my daughter working for this prestigious firm and all of this. And my mother, in the middle of this conversation, said, "Cindy, why would you do that?" And I paused for a moment. Now, this is my mother, who hasn't worked since she was a cashier in high school, who's been behind our whole family and encouraged us, my sister, my two brothers, and I, all to go out and have pretty interesting careers, and doesn't generally step in and tell you what to do.
Sure.
And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting question. Why would I do that? And I paused for a minute and I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "You left corporate America, 15 years ago. You've been an entrepreneur in many different ways for a dozen years. And you'd be going to work for a big corporation again where all the decisions get made in New York." And I paused for a minute and I realized, oh my God, she's completely right.
That's hilarious.
And I stepped back and I realized that I really didn't have to do anything to look good anymore. I didn't have to do anything to prove anything to anyone anymore. I needed to do something that I was passionate about, that I would really, be emotionally and in every way attached to. And that was not going to be going to work for someone else. That was going to be launching my own firm and building a business that would look more like me versus more like somebody else.
And so all of a sudden that
it just clicked. It just clicked. It didn't matter. And let me just tell you, I literally had this conversation with my husband that night, and I said, "Look, here's the deal. We need to pay off the mortgage because I'm going to go with no salary for the next few years while I build this firm and raise a fund. And I'm actually going to invest in companies with my own capital to prove to people that I can do it first." And that's what I did for a couple of years.
Wow.
Before we, built the firm.
Yeah, because I can tell you, for a minute, I tried to raise a fund.
Oh, no.
It is not easy.
No, it's not.
And, I give you kudos. And again, you're obviously doing awesome stuff. By the way, I'd like to introduce you to one of my dearest friends who actually is building a really cool piece of enterprise software.
Cool.
His name is Lee Cole. Company's called Skydera. definitely want to connect you with him. But anyway, I want to thank you for making the time. We have a little something. It's a T-shirt. We like to have our people walk around promoting this, or walking, or jogging, or sleeping.
That looks good.
Anyway, so I don't know if you know, but PITME is Peace in the Middle East, or Peace, Products and Technology in the Middle East. So Peace Through Technology is our theme.
It's great.
And
it's
the
fantastic.
idea is the show is supposed to educate, empower, and motivate people to follow footsteps that we see here, and people like yourself, and just taking a little chance and doing what they're passionate about. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Hope
Appreciate
you enjoyed it, and would love to stay in touch. And again, I will be the first person to send you enterprise deals. So,
awesome.
Not
awesome.
that you haven't already enough, but
we love women in tech too, by the way.
Yeah, of course. And we've talked about this. By the way, that's actually really quickly. I know we're out of time here almost, but talk about the State Department program with the 40 women from the Middle East, really quickly.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So a year ago, the U.S. Department of State sponsored a program that brought over 40 MENA women, all tech entrepreneurs, to spend 6 weeks being mentored by corporate women in tech here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic program.
Awesome.
The Anita Borg Institute here helped co-sponsor it. And I had an opportunity to speak to that group on 2 different occasions, and these women were so passionate about what they were doing. It was phenomenal. It was just a fantastic opportunity.
That's awesome. So we'd love to connect with them, because we're kind of doing something similar. We decided to just make it general, so we're running an Indiegogo campaign to actually sponsor 10 companies to come to the U.S. One's going to be at Singularity, one's going to the potentially the incubator in New York, and so the idea for us is to really bring people here and maybe not so much help them fundraise, but learn, educate, connect, and really immerse themselves in what's going on here. So by the way, if any of you 40 young entrepreneurs in the Middle East see this, or if you know one of them, we'd love to follow up with you and see, hear your story about coming here and the experience, because I'm sure it was tremendously amazing, interesting, and again, I would love to do something like that, even having been here. I'd love to follow a entrepreneur around, our CEO, that and learn from what they're doing every day. Anyway, Cindy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Hope you had fun here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I want to thank ArabNet again for helping us distribute this content. Also, want to thank our sponsor, PayPal. We will see you next time. Peace.